So good afternoon, and thank you for joining us. This is the pre-submittal workshop for our outreach and engagement funding that we have available. And we're going to really kind of go over everything that you're going to need to know to submit an application and what it would be like to contract with us. We know that a lot of our buy-in for organizations are really small organizations. And so we just want to make sure that you're prepared on what will happen in the course of having a contract. My name is Rebecca Royce. I am a program coordinator. I've been with the county for over 12 years, and I've been lead on the Treasury rent assistance and other eviction prevention programs that we've had in place for the last couple of years since the pandemic started. With me today is Tom Breitenbach, program coordinator, and Jasmine Guillen Loera. I always mess up her name, so sorry. She is also another program coordinator. They are both working specifically with us on the COVID funding, and they will be leads for the buy-in for contracts for the outreach engagement services moving forward. We're using WebEx for our training today, and we do have the option of having closed captioning available. This tells you how to put on the closed captioning, so there's a little icon that you can click on and you can start that. You can also lock participants in a specific viewing pattern if you would like to do that. We don't have any ASL interpreters today, so I don't know that that's really important, but we do make sure that that's available if you're interested in seeing very specific people in the recording. We do want to welcome you. We ask that you stay muted while we're presenting, but please don't hesitate to stop us and ask questions anytime in the presentation. And then we'll also have time at the end to answer any questions that you might have. So you can either wait or you can interrupt us. Either is fine. This is a conversation and a discussion, and we want to make sure that you have all of the tools necessary for submitting the application. As we mentioned, the meeting is being recorded. And then we will also provide the PowerPoint after the meeting, and then we'll try to provide the training itself also to the small group here. And again, don't hesitate to ask us any questions while we go through this. This is just a brief overview of what we're going to talk about today. So we're going to do a program overview. We're going to talk about referral services, different types of outreach services. We'll do a quick billing overview, and then again have time for questions and answers at the end. So I'm going to turn it over to Jasmine to talk about a program overview.
Hi, everyone. So right now we'll just start giving an overview of the program, and we will start off with the eligibility criteria. So when it comes to the eligibility criteria for this program, there are really three components. The first being the income eligibility. And so for this program, the income eligibility is set to 60% area median income for Clark County. And this is something that the housing providers will be responsible for, but once they do get referrals from, for households for this program, they will attempt to get the documentation. So whether that is if the households report that they have employment income, then they'll try getting that source documentation from their employer. They'll also be able to do a self-declaration option, but that will be a last resort. The second component for income for eligibility is a financial hardship due to COVID-19. So it must be directly or indirectly related, and it must threaten the household's ability to pay for the cost of the rental property. Verification will also be collected by the housing providers, and most likely in the form of a self-declaration or unemployment benefits. And then the third eligibility criteria is that the households must be at risk of homelessness or face housing instability. And again, housing providers will try getting that verification if it's available. So the services provided in Clark County is limited to a 12-month period, and that is for rent and utility assistance. So households are eligible for rental arrears dating back to March 13, 2020. And they're also eligible for 3 months of future rent assistance. But that is a total combined. So if they're going to pay arrears and future rent, it must total to 12 months evenly. This program is also a one-time access. So if households have been previously assisted with these funds, they will no longer be eligible for assistance again. And this is really due to limited funding. Households are also eligible for utility assistance, and those households will be referred to Clark Public Utilities, and that is only for electricity bills with past due electricity bills. There are certain exceptions that can be made. So if utilities are included on the lease, that will be treated as rent. So for example, the electricity, gas, water, sewer, trash remover, energy costs, and fuel, oil, and possibly internet, if those are on the lease, those can be treated as rent. So please note that applicants can only receive 12 months worth of assistance, and that's a combination of utilities and rent, regardless of any, what is paid for any given month. Equity and inclusion. So some traditionally marginalized communities have been disproportionately affected by COVID-19. So at Clark County, we want to make sure that we offer equitable access to all, including our marginalized populations. And so the way that we're trying to do that is making sure that our assistance is equitable and partnering with the by and for agencies for outreach and engagement services. So if you look at the chart below, you will see, the performance measures for our county. And so all of these goals have been identified by Commerce. And the first 4 goals that you see there are proportionate to the population needs of our county. So the performance measure for, to serve households headed by a person of color, the goal identified was at least 31%. What we've actually been serving, the percentage that we've actually been serving for that population has been 46.5. The goal to serve households headed by a person who identifies as Black or African American, the goal is at least 3%. And what we've actually been targeting and hitting has been 14.7. To serve households headed by a person who identifies as American Indian or Alaska Native is at least 1% was the goal. And we're actually, serving 1.8%. Serving households headed by a person who identifies as Latinx or Hispanic, the goal was at least 15%, and we're actually serving 16.2%. And that last goal that you see there regarding youth-headed households is a new goal, and it's not determined like the previous goals were. However, it is a goal set for all jurisdictions that receive funding. And so you see the goal is 10%, and what we've actually been serving is 10.2%. So program access, how can households access the program? So for the general public, there's 3 ways. The first being the Council for Homeless housing hotline, and the numbers listed right there. Second being the online portal. And for those without internet or phone, SHARE has advised that they can assist households with completing the application. The additional access points are our by and for referring partners. So next we'll be reviewing the referral services. So this is if you're going to be a referring agency for this program. So we'll start off with a general overview of what it is to be a referring partner. So if your agency wants to be a referring partner, your agency will be partnered with a housing provider that those referrals are routed to. And the referrals are submitted through an online portal. And so all those referrals will be routed to that housing provider that you're partnered with. Please note that the referral does not guarantee a household will receive assistance. The housing provider still has to, meet with that household and ensure that they are eligible for the program, and all the eligibility criteria that we already, reviewed a few slides ago. And the referral does not guarantee immediate assistance, and this is typically because there is a wait list for the program. Program components. So this is kind of what we're kind of talking about and what we will be asking of you, the referring agencies. So if you can just please ask the household if they have already received rental assistance since July 2021. And this is because it is one-time assistance through this funding. If the household is unsure or they state that they did receive assistance but are not aware of the details, you can go ahead and move forward with that referral. The referring agency will have to verify that the household hasn't received any Treasury assistance once they receive that referral. If it turns out that they have received assistance through this funding, they will be notified that they're ineligible for further assistance, and they'll also go ahead and contact you, letting you know what that update is. We also ask that you talk to the household about their area median income and ensure that they're under 60% AMI for their family size. And the way that you do that, so let's say a household states that they are a household of 2, you would just, go to the number 2 and see that the 60% area median income is $46,440. So as long as they're at or below that, they will be eligible for it with their 60% AMI. Program components continued. So please inform the household that eligibility documentation may be required, and then that once they get routed to the housing provider, they will go ahead and work with them to get all the documentation that they need. We do ask that the online referral portal is completed by your agency and not given to the households to fill out on their own. So we do ask that you fill out the Treasury Assistance online referral portal for them. Please note that due to anticipated demand, please give housing providers at least 2 weeks to go ahead and contact the household, and please only submit 1 referral per household. And now to talk about the outreach services, I will pass it back to Rebecca.
Thank you, Jasmine. So the outreach is going to be into 2 different types of outreach partners with this round of funding. We need to do that because of the way the structure of the program is. And so Tom is actually going to go into the details of the different types of outreach, what type of referring partner you are.
Hello, everyone. So there are 2 types, as Rebecca mentioned. One is outreach by referring partners. So if you are referring to a provider and have a contract with us to do so, you will also be outreaching to collect that those referrals, so you can send them to the providers. So that's one way of doing outreach. And then the outreach by non-referring partner is you'll just be updating the your community and your clients or your contacts about upcoming wait list openings. And so next slide, please. Eligible services by referring partner. So we'll cover this one first. Next slide. So for this one, again, it is if you're doing referrals to a provider of rental assistance, you'll need to, of course, outreach so you can collect the referrals to be able to send. And those efforts can continue on and be made at any time until you've reached the maximum number of referrals that you're able to provide per your contract. So we'll work with you to determine what that will be. And then outreach efforts should direct households to your agency for possible refers to the house. So if you're doing outreach and talking about being able to refer someone to a rental assistance provider, it wouldn't be the other agency you were outreaching to who would provide the referral. Again, they would provide you with the information and you would be the one doing the referral. Next slide, please. So on all of your efforts to outreach, you want to make sure that you have this publicity requirement listed in all of your documentation going out. It is required by the U.S. Treasury Department, and you'll have a copy of this information to be able to post. So, next slide, please. So one means of outreaching might be social media, and you can use any social media platform. Facebook. There's quite a few out there. Must include the name of the program and how to access the program, and of course, for you, you're not going to be letting them know how to access the program on the portal. You're going to letting them know how to refer somebody to you, so you could refer them to the referring agency. So it's a little bit different than what we have done in the past. So billing requirements, reimbursement for each post on each platform, no more than 1 time per day. And then documentation of each post, including the platform, post, content, and date must be submitted with the invoice. And you'll get a copy of this presentation, so you'll be able to go refer back. And plus, it'll be on your contract. So one example might be a screenshot of the post. Or other forms of documentation could work. You just please reach out to the county, your county contact person to figure out what might best work for you. Next slide, please. So email distributions is another way that you could do outreach. Emails must include program information. Contractor must follow the publicity requirement noted in the contract. And then billing requirements. So email must be sent to at least 20 recipients. And the email can be sent to each recipient as often as weekly. And then a copy of that email, and if it could be the email, a saved PDF or a screenshot, whatever works best for you. And if you have questions about that, just please reach out to your county contract person. Translations, so translations of documentation not already provided by the county. So you'll want to contact your county staff to find out, to get verification of what is needed before you proceed with that. And then its hourly reimbursement rate is $75 per hour. And then brief description of the time spent on the translation. You want to provide that with the billing. It's a huge variation between one document to a next, or one social media post to the next. So we want somewhat of an explanation on that. And it must be submitted with the invoice. So community membership presentations. Presentations must include an overview of the program, including main eligibility requirements that Jasmine had went over. And then how to access the program, which would be, again, through you guys. So presentations can be provided in person or via virtual format. Does not require slides or oral presentations, so it could be informal. That is good. So contractors must follow the publicity requirements noted in the contract, as previously mentioned. And then billing requirements, documentation of presentation must be submitted with the invoice, and a copy of the agenda or the minutes or a written verification of the presentation from a meeting organizer. So you can be creative. There's probably several different ways you can verify that the presentation occurred. Next slide. Website announcements. So it must include the name of the program and how to access it. Examples of reimbursement activities. Again, these are examples of video logs, translation and interpretation for program access. Contractor must follow the publicity requirements noted in the contract. And for billing requirements, documentation of information on the website must be submitted with the invoice. And a screenshot is one example of how you might send it. I would not send the actual web address, because if you make changes to it and we go to check the web address, then it won't be there anymore. So preferably a screenshot. Next slide, please. Phone and text communication. So all communications or messages by phone or text must include the name of the program and how to access the program. Voicemails are allowed. Must include the name of the program and how to access the program. Text messages are allowed. Reimbursement is for the entire conversation, not per text response. And then must include the name of the program and how to access the program. If households re-engage with the additional questions, this is considered a separate conversation. So this text option is actually used quite a bit. So I know that especially, some people prefer texting, and so we support and encourage that. So billing requirements, documentation for reimbursement must include log of calls with date and initials or phone numbers. So some have sent screenshots and some have done logs. So it doesn't necessarily have to be actual screenshot if that is okay to do it that way, but just want to make sure that we provide some flexibility on how you give us that information. Next slide. And so the other way of doing outreach is eligible services by non-referring partner. So this is those who are not going to be referring participants directly to, or applicants, I'm sorry, directly to the rental assistance providers. So instead, you'll be informing people of the option of applying for the services on their own. Next slide, please. So outreach efforts are going to be a little bit different than how we've done it in the past if you're used to that. Outreach efforts can only be made for the time the county notifies the public that the general wait list is open until the wait list until it is open. So, and the reason for that is because previously we had the wait list open on a continual basis, and since then we've had to halt on the openings because it was beyond our capacity to serve that number of people. So we periodically open it, and we want to make sure we maximize the opportunities for the buy-in for partners to notify those who most need it, so they can apply at that specific time when it's open. So, and sometimes we only have a few days notice, and sometimes those openings are only open like a half an hour to an hour. So it's really imperative that people are notified of the exact date and how to access it, so they can be first in line. Typically, 2 to 3 days prior to opening, you'll be notifying people of the opening, and then opening dates are determined based on the length of the wait list and the availability of funding. Outreach efforts are limited to specific activities. So next slide, please. And now, again, all of your publicity or all your outreach should include this statement in it. And again, you'll have a copy of this so you can do so. Next slide. Social media posts. So this is real similar to the previous slides I provided, but there's going to be just a small bit of difference. So I do want to go over it. So I apologize for any repeats, but there is some differences. So use any social media platform, must include the name of the program and how to access it. And this is going to be how they access it is, of course, is going to be on the portal, and you'll provide them with the information about the portal and the time in which it's going to open. Acronyms is okay. Attachments of news release meets the requirement. So you'll have a copy of the news release, and if you just want to attach that to the social media platform, it has all the information that you need. So that might be the easiest way to provide the information, as long as it doesn't need to be translated. So billing requirements, reimbursements for each post on each platform, no more than 1 time per day. Documentation of each post included the platform, post content, and date must be submitted with the invoices. And again, screenshots might be one option, or other forms of documentation may be allowed. Please contact your county. Next slide, please. Email distribution. Email must include news release. Contractor must follow the publicity requirements noted in the contract. And billing requirements. Email must be sent to at least 20 recipients. And again, email can be sent to each recipient as often as weekly. Copy of each email, including the number of recipients, the date sent, must be submitted with the invoice. Translations. So translations of the news release into languages other than Spanish to be used in outreach efforts. Billing requirements. Again, it's $75 an hour. A brief description of the time spent on doing the translation is going to be important, and documentation of translation must be submitted with the invoice. Next slide, please. Website announcements must include the date of when the opening will occur. And again, I can't emphasize that enough because it's a small window of time that the opening is going to happen. And the date and time, I actually would say. And then must include the name of the program and how to access the program. Examples of reimbursement activities, Video logs are translation interpretation for program access. Contractor must follow the publicity requirements as previously mentioned, and billing requirements, documentation information on a website must be submitted with the invoice. And again, a good example of that would be a screenshot. Next slide. Phone text communication. All communication or messaging by phone or text must include the name of the program, how to access the program, and when the opening will occur to the news release. Voicemails are allowed, must include the name of the program, how to access, same as mentioned before, the same requirement of, and then text messages are allowed. And then again, same as the other one, the requirement is for in the entire conversation, not per text response, and must include the name of the program, how to access it, when it's going to occur. Billing requirements, the same as the previous, documentation of reimbursement or information must be included in your invoice, and a screenshot of conversation is an acceptable means, or a log of some sort. So are there any questions about how to do outreach, the differences between the two?
I'm not seeing anything in the chat. I think the biggest thing for us is just to make sure that there's a clear understanding that there are two different types of doing outreach this time around. One is you're referring household, you're putting the outreach and engagement out to refer people to you so that you can help them apply to a direct housing provider as a referring partner. Or you're providing the information once we open up the wait list to the general public so that they know how to access the wait list when it opens, which will be limited times. One thing I will say is that we want to be very clear about the fact that they are going to want to be there when the general wait list opens, because Tom mentioned that the wait list only opens for a half hour, and that's absolutely true. The spots go extremely fast. So just making sure that your communities know, if we say that the portal is opening at noon on Wednesday, they need to be there at noon on Wednesday and make sure that they're there so that they can get in there. Otherwise, the portal will close and they won't have the opportunity to apply. So those are the two main outreach types. Another thing that I would want to also stress is, it's really important. We're not asking you to collect any of the documentation for the referring partners, any of the eligibility components for the program. But we do want you to have those conversations with the household just to make sure, because it is very traumatic to be told no over and over again that you don't qualify. So if if a household has mentioned to you that, yes, they've received rent assistance since July, they're just not eligible. And it's, we don't want you to try to move that household forward in the referral process. Would ask that you find other or provide them other resources in the community. It also means when we send a household through the referral portal, the housing provider has to go through a denial process, which includes the grievance process and everything else. So when we send households knowingly that have received assistance, the housing provider has to go through a process. And so it takes time away from them to be able to process other households that are eligible. So those are just a couple of things that I want to stress before we move into the billing component about the program to try to make this program go as smoothly as possible. So if there aren't any questions, I'll move into what billing looks like. So just a general overview, there's 4 components to your invoice. One is a claim voucher. We provide that to you, and I'll show you what that looks like in a moment. A payment request form that helps both of us track how you're spending on the contract itself. A general ledger or an invoice, and then the backup documentation. We also want to stress that the county has 30 days from the receipt of a complete and accurate invoice packet to make payment. And complete and accurate is really important for this. It's complete and accurate is when we have all of those 4 components together. So we have all the backup documentation to show that the services have been provided. And then if you've not worked with us before and aren't set up for electronic funds transfers, we highly recommend doing that because it makes the payment process a lot faster for you. So this is a copy of a claim voucher, an example of a claim voucher. You'll see there's a CV number over here that stands for claim voucher and a number. Please make sure not to use the same claim vouchers for more than one invoice, because that number is very important in our financing system and it will reject it if it's used the same number. We will provide you copies of the claim voucher so you have that to use in your billing. The rest of the claim vouchers is pretty simple to fill out. We do need the contract number. We'll provide that to you, and the billing period. And that could be every month you decide to bill us. And then you would say, for example, March 2022. You could be billing us every week. And that would be, then you would put, March 8th through 11th and 2022. It just has to kind of tell us what that billing period is that you're requesting reimbursement of funds for. We also need you to include the name of your agency and the address. And then in this area where it says description of services, this can be as descriptive or not descriptive as you would prefer. You could put outreach and engagement and put the total amount over here, and that would be fine. You could break it down for us and say that you were doing social media and how many social media, and then the total for social media, and how many email distributions, and then the total for that. So how you want to put that together is up to you, and we'll work with you on that to make it as easy as possible. And then the final component is your signature. And here it's an electronic document that you can electronically sign, or you can print it out and sign it, whatever works best for your agency. The second component of the invoice packet is going to be the payment request form. This is an Excel document that we put together and we'll send out to you. And then I will show you an example of that form. One thing to note is that the amount on the payment request form needs to match the amount that you are submitting on the cover page, that claim voucher, along with the invoice or additional backup that you're providing. This form does not need a formal signature, but we do ask that we have a contact name and an email address for who's submitting the packet. So when we have questions, which we undoubtedly will have, especially with new agencies, then we know who to contact. So this is an example of the payment request form. So you can see it says payment request form up here. We will put in the name of your agency and the contract number. So this will be easily available to you to put on the claim voucher when you get that. And then in this example, our agency is doing email distribution, translation, social media posts, website announcements, and referrals. This budget authority is going to match your contract. So the number of each of these services that you opt to do will be set in here, and it will automatically tell us how much funding you have available in each of those categories. If you decide during the time that you're contracting with us that you would rather do more social media posts than email distribution, then we can use this section here, the budget change request. So you can tell us, oh, I only want to do 5 email distributions and I want to do 70 social media posts. And as long as it doesn't change the total amount of the contract, we can make those adjustments very easily. It does not require a modification to your contract. So here's an example that we have 2 months of billing. The first month claim voucher number was 1843, and that's what that number here is. They billed us for 2 email distributions for $125 each, or $250 total, and the spreadsheet will do the calculation for you. 2 hours of translation, 10 social media posts, a website announcement, and 8 referrals, and then for a total of $3,150 in that reimbursement request. The next month, they opted to do 3 email distributions, 1.5 hours of translation, another 10 social media posts, a website announcement, and 10 more referrals for a total of $3,737.50. So this will calculate for you to help you fill out your claim voucher. And you'll see at the bottom, adjusted line item to date. This is saying that they've already billed for 5 email distributions, 3.5 hours of translation, and then they have 5 remaining and 2.5 hours remaining. So that's what these 2 rows down here, and this is what we really pay attention to when we receive your invoice to make sure that you're not overbilling in one category versus another category or overbilling the total amount. And this is where it's really helpful to keep track of the services that you've been provided, especially if this program goes on for a few months. It'll be very helpful for you. And then down at the bottom, you can see we just need the accountant name or whoever the best contact person is and their email address. So hopefully this isn't too complicated of a document to fill out. If you have any questions at any time through contracting the program with us, we are always happy to help. You'll have a specific program contact, either Tom or Jasmine, and they will help you with any technical assistance that you need from the contracting to the billing and any questions that you might have in between. So that is everything that we had to present for you today, and would like to go ahead and open it up again for questions and answers if there's anything that you thought about while we were going over the presentation. You're a very quiet bunch today. So one thing to note, applications for the funding, for the outreach and engagement funding, are due by next Friday. You can submit them anytime. There's a PDF application that was sent out by Tom. And so you can fill that out, submit that back to us. We don't know exactly what the amount of funding that we have is not as extensive as we've had in the past. So we'll work with you about what that looks like once you've submitted your application. We anticipate the rent assistance funds are going to run out in June, so that can give you a kind of an idea of what you should anticipate, like for how long you would be doing outreach and engagement activities. We don't know how many times the waitlist is going to open in that time frame either, unfortunately, because it really does depend on how much funding is going out per household. That's why we only open up a limited number of times to a limited number of households. It's really important to us that we make sure that we are able to serve all the households that are on the wait list. And so we don't want to overextend the wait list. And we know we have about 1,600 people still on the wait list right now that we're working through.
And that's the reason why we only open it up for so many households per month. So.
If you guys don't have any questions, there's no reason to hold you hostage in this meeting. I know it's near the end of the day. If you do come up with any questions, please don't hesitate. You can respond to Tom's email and ask any of your questions, and we'll make sure that we get you answers to those questions so that you can submit an application.
Excuse me, I had a question.
Yes.
If you mentioned about the utility bills being paid, say they've used up their 12 months, but still could qualify for help with utilities, does that coincide with, because you were helped with rent and not with utilities at that time, can they still apply for utility assistance?
They can, as long as it's the same months that they received rent assistance. So when we look at the services provided, rent and utilities, it's all about what was provided or how many months that was provided. So as long as they're the same month. So if they've already received assistance, let's say for June through December, 6 months of assistance of rent, but they have arrears in utilities that are from January through December, that's 12 months. So they'd be able to get all 12 months of utility assistance because 6 of those months overlap with months they've already received rent assistance. But if they'd received assistance moving forward, more rent assistance, they just have to coincide. The months have to match up. And then that can't exceed 12.
Okay.
And if they're getting utility in this situation, then that means they're not paying utilities to their landlord because it would have been included in the landlord payment. The Clark Public Utilities is fully aware, and they will make sure that they walk through that and meet that requirement.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Miracle, did you have a question?
Yeah, a quick question. If we come in contact with one of the families that are on the wait list, is that something we need to ask when we're talking to applicants?
You could ask them if they're already on the wait list. That does not preclude you from going ahead and submitting a referral for that household. The housing providers are going to do their best to prioritize the referrals that are coming in from our buy-in for partners. So it could mean that they get, assistance faster than being on the general wait list.
Okay, thank you.
The big deal really is, have they already received assistance? And that's where we are finding, situations coming up. We want to make sure that, it's very traumatizing to sit on the wait list forever, not knowing if you're going to get assistance. But it's also traumatizing to, get your hopes up that you're going to receive additional assistance. And that's why we ask our buy-in for organizations, if they say yes, they've already received assistance, just to be honest and let them know right then that they're most likely not going to be eligible for the program. So Julie is asking if we have an estimated range or max for total services costs that organizations should apply for, and we don't. We've done that in the past, and then we had money left over. And so we don't really have that. I would say, I think, did we estimate that we had like 60,000, I think, total for the entire program?
70.
Plus the referrals. The referrals are set aside, so we don't. It's more about what do you think you can do in that time frame, and we can help with that, like negotiate what that what it really should look like. Julie, have we worked with your agency before? Because your name's not familiar.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. I'm from Scholar Fund. We work with counties across Washington State, but we have I think it's about 7,000 clients in Clark County.
Fantastic. I think you are on our distribution list. That must be how that we heard you, and I'm excited to have you participate, even if it's just having a conversation and you don't actually apply for funds. So yeah, we have a set number of referrals already set aside for the buy-in for organizations. I think it's about 350 referrals for the buy-in for organizations. So we know that we have the funding for that number of referrals available, and then you can apply for what you feel like your agency is going to be able to do. We have about 10 different buy-in for organizations that we work with, and about 5 of them typically do referrals into the program, partnered with the housing partners. But again, this is a really, Karen, I know, can tell you over the time frame, this has been a really fluid program, and all of a sudden we get more funding, and we're learning how to do things in different ways to try to meet the flexibilities of the program. We learned with the first round of funding not to just do a continuously open wait list, because people ended up not getting funded. They were on the wait list for a while and then didn't get any assistance, and that is extremely traumatic. So we want to not have that happen this time. Yeah, so I think one thing we didn't include in this presentation, which probably is an important thing, but I believe it was in the email, is just making sure that your agency meets the buy-in for requirement. So you're an agency by the community that you're serving. So leadership and things like that are all of a community that has traditionally been underserved. So making sure that that matches or meets the commerce requirement for that. And then we can definitely do the outreach and engagement and referral services. Any other questions for us today? All right. Well, I won't hold you any longer, and just know that we are here to answer questions. So please don't hesitate to reach out to us if you have any questions, if you think of something later. We'll get this, now that we've had the second pre-submittal meeting, we'll go ahead and get this, I'll get this recording converted to a YouTube, and then send out the PowerPoint and the recording. So if anybody couldn't make it today, or if you want to share it with colleagues that you're working with before you submit your application, you can have all of that information available, and then submit your applications. So we really appreciate your time coming in today. If there's any other types of outreach and engagement activities that you think work really well for your communities, please don't hesitate to reach out to us, because we're always trying to find better ways. We know that each community has, their best ways of communicating different strategies and things that are going on. So we want to make sure that we provide that opportunity to your agencies. All right. Well, thank you very much. Have a great afternoon.
Thank
Thank you
you.
all.
Thank you.